today we're going to be having a masterclass with Bernadette McClelland. She's the CEO of Three Red Folders, a company who are helping businesses all over the world to create sales smart cultures. Their vision is for all SME businesses to willingly embrace the psychology, science and strategies necessary for sustainable growth. Bernadette herself helps businesses to tap into their roles and responsibilities, their outcomes and strategies, and the psychology and science behind how they will get there. In this morning's masterclass, we're going to focus on how to sell remotely when nobody wants to see you, a huge challenge that all businesses are facing nowadays. Good morning, Bernadette. You're very welcome.
Good morning, Elaine, and thank you so much for having me on.
It's lovely to have you down at the other side of the earth. And for everybody tuning in here today, I'm speaking to Bernadette from Melbourne in Australia. An Aussie lady, but with sure Irish roots.
Yes, absolutely. So my heritage is 𝗕𝗲𝗿𝗍𝗲𝗁 down in County Clare. I was there about 3 years ago. So if anybody knows Patsy Karukin, say good day to me, to him for me.
Very good. It just shows what a small world that we're living in. And I think now more than ever, the fact that so much of our personal interactions and physical sales meetings have all moved virtually, it's definitely thrown up a lot of challenges but opportunities at the same time. So we're delighted to be with you this morning, Bernadette, to help shine a light on maybe how we can get in front of some of those audiences.
Look, it's a dilemma that's facing everybody that has to sell something today, because the last thing that anybody wants to do in the environment that we're in now is to be perceived as being predatory. To be perceived as being an ambulance chaser. And we don't know in a lot of cases the situation that's happening on the other end of the phone. It's interesting. I did a presentation in London a couple of years ago, and I used some research from Forrester Research, and they said that from 2020 onwards that there would be 22% decrease in sales roles due to artificial intelligence. Who would have thought that a virus would have come along and impacted that whole ecosystem, if you like? So we really need to look at the sales function within a business, and we need to realize that this is the economic engine. And the first few months, and I did this as a business owner and helped my clients do it, and I also did it to serve my clients. Mm-hmm. And I delivered some pro bono work to really help them get through. And I've been working with and advising clients to also do that for their clients. Just in that, but we're at the point now where serving is wonderful, but we have to start selling.
Yes, the time we all know that cash is the lifeline of any business. So if you don't have the cash and the cash flow, your reserves run out. And Exactly. So what I would love to share with your audience, Elaine, is a couple of ways, or a couple of, I guess, strategies and how-tos around, what a business can do today to increase their opportunity of getting in front of some of their buyers or potential buyers. And I think first and foremost is how we actually approach our prospect, or how we actually, what is it that we actually say? Mm-hmm. I'd like to give your audience four categories of potential buyers. So we have our existing clients, and so those existing clients that we have, they already love us. There's that whole like and trust factor there. So there is an opportunity for us to get more share of their wallet, meaning getting more of their, I guess, real estate within their business, sell more of our stuff. So we're already there. The second component are those prospects that are already in our pipeline that haven't come on board yet, but they're sitting there, and the chances of them,
our pipeline's just stuck. Some of those deals aren't going anywhere, they're just not moving. And so what can we do there, and how can we kind of go back to those people in our pipeline and basically try to move them through the pipeline and do it in a really elegant, respectful way. The third category of contacts is those clients that have been inactive for a while, and also to look at the deals that you've lost. Over the past few years, there's deals that you would have lost that would have gone to the competition. Have you kind of kindled a relationship with them, or have you left it so long that you feel really awkward? So that's another avenue. Then, of course, there's new business, and we've all got to generate some form of new business, net new business somehow. I'd like to throw an extra one in there, and that is your suppliers. From a new business perspective, if you go to some of your suppliers or some of those people that share the same client base that you do, that perhaps have a different product, how can you collaborate with them? So I'd like to just kind of put those out on the table and just say, there will be some gold. But then the thing is, how do you actually approach them in a way that is, I guess, not awkward? And to share with your audience, to pick up the phone and to make contact and to simply, frame the conversation in a way that's, similar to the following. And this is what, I help my clients with is, Elaine, we're finding that there's 3 different categories of clients or 3 different categories of businesses. There are those that are absolutely blitzing it. They are really leveraging this situation, this environment. There are those that aren't, and unfortunately they're suffering. And then there's those in the middle that are keeping their head above water, working on their policies and their training and all the rest of it. Where do you fit in? Which one of those categories do you fit into? And it's really listening and doing it in such a way that it is totally genuine and empathetic. But what you're also doing is you're allowing the conversation to be about them. And when I, a lot of what we do is we work with our clients and we also bring in value sets. And what a value is, as you would more than likely know, is something that's important to you. And when you're in your business, you will have values, that may be success, it may be generosity, it may be whatever, because these things are important to you. And so in those initial conversations where you are kind of finding out where your prospect sits or your client sits, then by asking them, look, what is really important to you and your business? And by asking that question in a really authentic way, you're then eliciting their values. And you're then eliciting what is really important to them, and your conversation becomes deeper. So that's a couple of things that I could share in that initial conversation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense, Bernadette. That sounds great, Bernadette, and I think those 4, those 3 different types of categories resonate with so many people, and I got them straight away. But also the 4 different types of clients or categories of clients that you can potentially go after. They're universal, really. So no matter where you are in the world, or irrespective of your business size or industry that you're in, I think that they're unilateral across the board. So anxious to hear more, Bernadette.
Yeah, and you know, another way to frame a conversation, you know, is simply to say, you know, if you have somebody in your pipeline that you're not sure how to kickstart it, and you know, is this a deal going to happen, and how do I kind of close them, or how do I kind of move it along? Is simply to say that, you know, we've been having active discussions with you. And I would love to get a sense of where you're at with this, because the last thing that I want to do, I know you will have competing priorities, and the last thing I want to do is to, you know, be a pain, basically. I mean, that is so human. That's not sales. That is simply something that is normal communication. You're respecting the fact that business will have competing priorities. It may be redundancies, it may be cash flow, it may be anything. But I think the ability to be able to call the elephant and to be able to say, look, you know what, we have been having active discussions. I know that you've probably got competing priorities. I would love to know or get a sense of where you're at with our conversation.
And I think saying that up front is very powerful as well.
Very much so. And, you know, then you're able then to pivot off that and say, well, look, totally get it. Tell me, what are your objectives? What are your priorities? You know, what is important to you? But to make sure that you leave that conversation with a follow-up. Look, say, you know what, I'm going to leave you alone for the month of June, month of July. What say I send you an invitation for August the 3rd? And so the important thing is to leave a conversation with some form of advancement.
Perfect. And do you think it's important to be specific in that advancement? You just mentioned their specific date.
Yeah, I think so, because it's very easy for, it's very easy for us to say, how about I give you a buzz in a few weeks' time? And that's now lost. But if you say, look, you know, how about we catch up on August the 3rd, that's, you know, 4 to 5 weeks away, they will say yes, you're just not a Elaine.
Yeah, perfect.
They will say yes. And then of course it's like, okay, what I'll do is I'll send you an invite, and I will just put a note as an agenda item so that when the time comes, you'll understand the relevance behind it.
Perfect.
And you know, then to put something in the body of that invitation just as an agenda item, because we know what happens if we get an invitation and we've forgotten who the person is, and chances are we may not show up for it. So that's very important as well. And it's also demonstrating your desire to really be of service to them.
Really makes sense. And I'm just thinking of something that I have to do, so that already I have a learning there, and that is it's a very good, should we say, reference point in having that detail in the body of a calendar invite.
Yeah, absolutely, because it provides context. It absolutely gives context. You know, something else that will be an aha for your audience, I'm hoping, is that I will say to a salesperson or one of my clients, I will say to the guys, tell me, what does your buyer or what does your client, what would they consider is value? You know, and of course, the salespeople or whoever it is, that I'm business owner, whoever it is, they will then tell me what the buyer perceives value to be. And I will say to them, is that your perception of what the buyer sees value as being, or is that what the buyer perceives to be value? So that is another really strong question, is to ask your prospect or your buyer, you know, if we were to work together, what would you see? What would you need to see that would know that you were getting value? You know, and what does working with somebody, what does value mean to you? And you will get a totally different answer than what you think it might have been.
Plus, I think it puts it back on them as well.
It does. And then they do the heavy lifting for you. So, and it does, it takes the weight away from having sales conversations when you can ask really good questions. So there's a couple of things, and of course now we're working remotely, and so, you know, that's something else that is, you know, we've got to get used to. And what's really important is that you have your video on. You know, so many people don't have their video on, and when we can have eye contact with people, that is one of the biggest trust generators. You know,
I agree, and I know for us, you know, it's the eye contact, and it's possibly the handshake if you're at a networking meeting, but the importance, the relevance of eye contact, you know, it can't be underestimated.
Absolutely, and you know, we can see what people are saying without them even saying the words. So, you know, being able to gather that body language, I guess, or that visual feedback is so important as well. So there's a couple of key points, and I guess the final one would be relate to speed. So, you know, when we come out of this, businesses will be ready to go. You know, their CapEx funding will be lifted, their recruiting will be lifted, they will be ready to go. And you need to have been visible enough, and you need to be responsive enough so that when they're ready to go, you are front of mind. And keep in mind that people, you know, their desire to get going will be so strong that even if you are more expensive, the fact that you've been visible, they will more than likely go with you. So in the meantime, even though you can't sell right now, it's firming yourself up for the end of the year. So that responsiveness is really important as well.
And it kind of goes back to not being the ostrich and have your head buried in the sand. It's about being seen, being visible, being there to the fore of the consumer's mind and of your customer's mind. Be that existing customers, old lost customers, where deals were lost, or else your, you know, prospective customers that are in your pipe. But the fact that you've been seen throughout this, to be supporting them, you know, knowledge sharing. You mentioned the pro bono yourself, etc. So these are all factors which generate goodwill towards you, your brand, and the business. But at the end of the day, we still need the sales, don't we, Bernadette?
Absolutely. And you know, and that's what, you know, that's another factor of it, is that whole psychology behind the salesperson's thinking. And that's critical as well. That's it.
And I'd love to have another chat with you on that, Bernadette. You know, and to share some of those tips. So I think for me, myself, there's been some, you know, some very good eye openers there. Some of the main questions that you just mentioned there, you know, is to ask, very important to get to know the values of your client, because what you think their values to be and what their values actually are, you know, can be very, very far apart. And the more they're aligned, the more potential there is that it's going to be a successful, you know, client-consumer relationship, you know, and a sale will follow on that. But as well as knowing that, look, you've got your current customers, you've got maybe customers that are there, stuck in the pipe, is how you're keeping those warm. And also another one you mentioned was that, you know, look at collaborations, maybe through some of your suppliers who you're serving into the same audience and the same marketplace, but you're not in competition with each other. And that's one thing I think that we are very good at doing, is collaborating. And it's a very, very positive side effect that I feel personally has come out of COVID, is the fact that companies and businesses are way more open to collaboration, I feel, and in my experience in the last few months, than they were before this.
I agree, totally agree. Yeah, well captured.
If there was one final departing point, Bernadette, that you'd like to leave our audience with this morning, what would that be?
You know, the word sell actually comes from the Old English word sellen, S-E-L-L-A-N, I think it is, and that means to give. So if we consider that our role is actually, the ABCs aren't always be closing, it's always be contributing. And our role is to work with our potential clients to help them grow their business.
Absolutely. And I think that shift in mindset alone maybe positions yourself in a much more, confident place as a salesperson as well. Bernadette, I look forward to catching up with you for part 2 of this chat. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Elaine.